Lizzy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited. So, for everyone listening, Lizzy is a run coach, and she had reached out to me basically saying, like, I would love to give you a pep talk, like, motivational little Zoom call before your race this weekend. And I was like, let's just do it live on the podcast. So, I don't know if we want to start there or start with the a million questions I have for everyone else. Maybe we start with like the intro to running questions that I have for you, and then we'll go into
Yeah,
my little session.
sounds good. And first of all, I do want to say congrats on the engagement. And it's so exciting that your race is kind of capping off this exciting week. So that'll be the grand finale.
No, this is like the best week of my life. So I'm
Yeah.
doing my first half ever. And then the day after is my fiance's full marathon. So we have like a double whammy.
And so nice that you can cheer him on afterwards as well.
Totally. I'm so happy I go first. Get it over with.
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with anyone who's listening that's like, I'm inspired by whether they're watching my running journey or just anyone on, like, I feel like run talk is a thing right now and people are
Yeah.
getting really inspired. So I'm going to start with like the absolute basics since you are a running coach. If someone comes to you, and I don't know if they do come to you at this level, but does anyone ever come to you and say, like, I want to start running and I don't know how or where to start? So, like, I want to sign up with a run coach. Is that a thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I will say, I in particular love working with beginners just to help people really find that love of running. And I think a lot of people come into it, they've been to a race, they've cheered for someone, maybe they want to do their first 5K or even longer. So that can often be a motivating goal where they want to work with a coach to be able to do that race distance. But I think it doesn't have to be that either. It can just be, I want to enjoy running as a part of my weekly routine. So I think in terms of tips for getting started, I know a lot of people will just say, just get out there and run. And it seems like, okay, but if I'm at step zero, like how do I even get to step one? So I think it's finding comfortable gear you have and picking a route you're familiar with. So a lot of people that will be around their neighborhood or maybe a local trail or something like that. And I always tell people, go slower than you think and walk as often as you want. Those are the two things I would say at the beginning. Don't worry about pace. Don't worry about specific distance. If you want to track it in some way, maybe use overall time. So if you know you can already walk for 10, 15, 20 minutes, have your goal be to go out for a run of that distance, but walk as much as you want. So you know you can walk that. So even if you run 1 minute of the 20 minutes and walk 19 minutes, you know you can get through that and you've just gone for your first run.
I love that because something I learned, well, because first of all, I just want to say I love the apps. Like I started with Couch
Yeah.
5K at the very beginning, and that app is amazing because you're walking for most of that plan.
Mm-hmm.
The apps are amazing because the Couch to 5K app, you're walking for like half of it. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
intervals. So it's like walk
Mm-hmm.
and run. And that's an amazing, not intimidating way to start. And that's where I started even with my beginners run club. We were doing like intervals. And then once I felt like, okay, I can run over a mile straight, which is like crazy looking at how far I've come since then. But that was
Yeah.
only like 6 months ago, not even,
Oh my
and maybe
gosh.
5. And then I kind of graduated and discovered the Nike Run Club app. And that's where I did the half marathon plan on there. And
Mm-hmm.
what I learned through that, which was like when I really started like running, like going for runs without stopping and just like kind of graduating a little bit longer distances, that's when Coach Bennett was in my ear saying, go slower than you think, go slower than
Yep.
you think, go really slow. You should be able to talk right now. And I would literally do the talk test. And I think the biggest misconception, and you tell me if like you feel the same with people who come to you, is that running is sprinting. And so I
Mm-hmm.
would always say I can't run a mile because I was out of breath at the end of the mile. But when you slow it down so much where you're barely jogging and you're kind of just like lightly moving, it's like a little walk jog situation, like faster
Yep.
than a walk, a light jog. And you realize that that is running, and that's how you can get started, just kind of like achieving distances like 2 miles, 3 miles by going super slow. It gives you a lot of confidence. And then what I found is over time, the speed just picks up as your body adjusts and is like, oh, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I think a lot of people have experienced running through other sports when it was sprinting based. So I definitely understand why people have that thought process. And I think the way to make it more enjoyable is to really slow it down, allow yourself to walk, and also don't go into it with a certain pace you have to keep in your head. I think a lot of people go into running, they just kind of pick a number of what they think their pace should be. And I think when you're first starting out, just leave that all behind, let your body find its natural pace, and also celebrate each milestone. Like getting to your first mile nonstop, or even smaller than that, running 5 minutes at a time. Like that is incredible when you're coming from a point of not being able to do that before. So definitely celebrate yourself as well.
I love that. And I think just as like a little tip of motivation, what I've learned from my new running journey is it actually gets more the runs get more fun the longer the distance, in my opinion. And because one, your body's getting used to it. We all like to do things we're good at. We don't love it in the
Yep.
beginning because we're terrible at it. But you're able to control your breath more. And the longer distances I find actually more fun because everyone's first mile is the hardest, which I didn't realize. And my boyfriend would always, oh, fiance would always say to me that he's like, "You don't get into a flow until, like, 5 or 6 miles," and it would always blow my mind. I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, but until
Yeah.
I did my first, like, 6, 7, 8-mile run up until 10 is when I realized, "Wait, you're so right." The first 5 miles, you're just trying to get through, and then your body kind of, like, is like, "Okay, we're doing this," and it's almost like muscle memory, and your body's just going, and you get in this flow, and you enjoy the music, and everything is just more fun. So kind of let that be motivation because I remember when I started my journey, it was more I was finding the later weeks of the training plan to be intimidating, but as it
Mm-hmm.
went on, it almost felt like it was getting easier instead of more scary.
Mm. That's great. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of times you'll find your flow and settle into the run. But definitely anyone listening to this, I don't want them to be intimidated. Like, I don't want to have to run 5 miles to
No,
feel
no,
good.
no. I'm
So know
talking if
that,
you're
yeah.
training for like a half marathon and you're
Yes.
intimidated like I was, just know it gets more fun, not more scary.
Absolutely. And I think there are lots of ways to make it fun along the way, like finding routes you really like, as you mentioned, a playlist or a podcast, or there's something you really want to run to as your destination. Like there are lots of ways to make it more enjoyable along the way. But completely agree. A lot of times, that first mile, the first few miles, they're going to feel the worst. And then you'll find that rhythm that helps the rest of the run be enjoyable.
Totally. And I'm curious, so do most people come to you because they have a certain pace in mind, because they're running their first half? Like why would someone if someone's listening and they're thinking about hiring a run coach, like what
Yeah.
does a run coach provide and who should not should be going to one, but who can go to one?
So the easy answer is anyone can work with a run coach, and that's definitely something I like to set the tone of is you don't have to be a certain pace or be running a certain frequency to work with a run coach. I think the most common case is you have a race goal, and that can be anything from completing a race distance to a personal best time. But it could also be working with a coach to find a plan that works for you and your schedule to run consistently. So it's really someone who's going to help you achieve whatever running goal you have. And the main benefit is it's supposed to take the planning and the thought process out of it, especially if you're new. Instead of having to research every element of how to train for something, you have someone working with you to say, hey, here's the plan I recommend. Let's adjust it as we go. I'm here to answer your questions. So you feel supported, and then you just get to do the fun part. I know not always fun, but mostly fun part of training and running with someone guiding you along the way.
And it sounds like it would be more individualized. So if you have a certain injury or
Mm-hmm.
you hate strength training, but you love, I don't know, the megaformer machine, like things like that. Like it sounds
Yeah.
like you'd be able to actually tailor it to someone and their lifestyle.
Yes, definitely. So I have done a lot of group coaching, which I also think is extremely beneficial because then you get the benefits of just talking to other people and you'll learn from them just like you would your coach. But now I'm moving into more one-on-one virtual programming so that, as you said, will be completely tailored to your own needs. Schedule conflicts, injuries, preferences, those will all be taken into consideration. But I also think group programs, especially if you have one in person, can be extremely beneficial too.
Totally. I think it's interesting. What I didn't realize going into running was that it seems like it would be an individualized experience, right? Like it seems like it would be a very solo sport and something you're kind of training for alone, because most people, if you're training for a race, like it's not that common that like all of your best friends are also, training
Yeah.
for a race. So what I didn't realize going into it is there is such a community around running at every level. I
Yep.
posted one TikTok saying, I want to join one of these run clubs, but I can barely run a mile. Like it blew up. I started this run club where we were all doing the Couch to 5K app together. And now it's a group of 10 of us, and all of us have signed up for a race, whether it be a 5K, 10K, half, even full. And all of us are now like talking about running in such a different way than when we started. But between that and then even on Run Talk and all of these different things, it's such a community. And if you move to a new city even and join a club like
Yeah.
Orphans or something, it's incredible how much community there is. And even like on on a virtual group call, like there's
Yeah.
so many opportunities to make friends and connect on like a joint goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I come from a background of running in high school and college, which was a team sport, even though it's individual. So, to your point, it's a nice activity that as an adult, you can still get a bit of that team mentality and experience while doing something on your own that's working towards your own goals. And I feel like you don't get a lot of opportunities to do that as an adult. So, it's a really nice way to be working towards something with other people, and to your point, meet new people. I have met so many people through running. It's such a great way to meet friends.
Right, because it's still something that you can do on your own schedule, but if you wanna join a run club once
Mhm.
a week and even miss it some weeks, like, you can still make friends. It's not like a team
Yeah.
sport where it's, like, practice every single day, you know what I mean? It's still something you can do alone, but you find so many people, and I think there's such emotion just through watching my fiancé go through it. Like, he's a marathon runner and he has run several, and the emotion that I've seen through him and his friends that comes with, you're training for 6 months to push your pace and then you get injured 2 weeks before, for example. That is such a heavy experience that most people can't relate to, but having that community around you of people who get it is an opportunity for connection and like a culture that I just didn't anticipate going into it. So if anyone is almost like feeling of I think for me, I was feeling this void of like so much of what I do, the success isn't measurable, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So all of my career goals and everything are so long term that it's like I needed something that was just for me in my personal life that I can gain confidence in being like, I did that. Like there's an end date. The half marathon's on this date. I'm gonna commit to this, show myself I can do it, and like boom, I'm confident. You know what I mean? It's more so it's like you're gaining so much more out of it than, like, pushing your pace. Like, there's so much more to running than I realized, and I'm curious what's, like before we get into the little training session we're gonna do, what's
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway that you find from people who come to you at how I was months ago, like, absolutely square 0, like, I don't run, and then they run a race or they just accomplish their goal of, like, I wanna be able to run 3 miles in a few months or whatever it is. Like, what's the main takeaway that you hear? Because 'Cause I'm sure it's so rewarding for you when you hear those takeaways. Like, what's the common positives?
I think the main one is just realizing you can do something you didn't think you could do, which I know is commonly talked about. But again, it's so rare that as adults we really put ourselves out there to try new things and have goals to work towards. So when you start doing something that you're not good at and you're trying for the first time, that's such a scary experience. And then to ultimately be able to achieve this huge goal, it just gives you this sense of confidence in other parts of your life, and really just sparks joy, rejuvenates yourself, like makes you feel empowered to do other hard things because you just accomplished this goal. And I think that's absolutely the most rewarding part of coaching too, is seeing that.
It's so cool, and I think another thing that's amazing about if you are someone who wants to start running is the training plans are so perfectly laid out to you and so accessible. You can literally look on Google Images, you can go on Nike Run Club, like, there's so
Yeah.
many apps and free training plans where all you have to do is read what's on Wednesday and do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's Nike Run Club. I was being coached in my ears every single day, and I just followed the next one, and so it's just so accessible and can be totally free, so it gives you so much more than you realize than just, like, fitness. So, okay, I'm running my first race this weekend. I'm, to
Yes.
be honest, like, been fully distracted. I got sick during the week I was supposed to, like, run the most I've ever ran, and I was supposed to run, like, 12 or something on my plan. I've run 10 miles 3 times, so I think I'll be okay
Mhm. Yep.
with, like, the adrenaline and everything of the race day, and then this week was entirely distracted by my
Yeah.
engagement, like, drank when I wasn't gonna drink, but whatever. I am so excited, but also so like, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I don't know, I just got the most overwhelming email of all time. It's, like, the
Yeah.
instructions for the 3 different races that weekend, and I'm like, "Wait, okay, what time? Where am I supposed to be?" Like, it's all very confusing. It's like, "Wait, I'm waking up at 4, I'm not gonna be hungry. Am I really supposed to eat?" Like, there's so many little things to prepare for. Where do you
Yep.
start? What are your race day tips? Like, someone comes to you overwhelmed like I am right now, where do we start?
Yes, that's why we're doing our pep talks. You're going to be
Yeah,
feeling great going into the half. So I would say to back up a tiny bit, like the week of, and the couple days leading up to the race, which you're at 2 days out, is definitely a focus on rest, hydration, fueling, and figuring out logistics. So especially that week in terms of fueling, sticking to foods that you're really familiar with and comfortable with. So foods you know you'll digest well, you've eaten them the night before a long run before, whatever that is for you, stick with that. And then hydrating with both water and electrolytes so you can retain that hydration so you're feeling really good headed into race day. The final week, there's nothing you're really doing training wise that's going to boost your fitness. So it's all just about kind of more resting your body, some shakeout runs here and there. So that's kind of leading into the race and then planning out logistics. So that is the best thing you can do now to help yourself out is make sure you feel confident with the logistics for race day, which is what we'll go through now
so
because I know it
overwhelming.
is so much. So I know you brought up the eating, so we can kind of start there. So one of my biggest tips is having a plan for when and what you're going to eat on race day, before the race, and during the race if you're fueling. Um, it is going to be early when you wake up. So that is just kind of something that happens with race days, but making sure that, again, you eat a familiar breakfast. Everyone's a little different with how long they need to digest. So I know for me, I try to eat something a little bit larger, like my main breakfast, an hour and a half to 2 hours before the race. So for me, that's usually a bagel with peanut butter. I've done oatmeal before. People will do banana and toast, something like that that's going to sit well. But whatever you've eaten before your long runs is best. And then closer to the race, again, if you know your stomach can handle this, this is all about personalizing it to you. Between 30 to 15 minutes out from the race, having something smaller. So maybe that's banana, half of a banana. Sometimes I'll take like a running gel about 15 minutes before. They make little waffles. But again, really sticking to what works for you. So, number one rule of race day is nothing new.
That's a really good tip. But when you say nothing new, it makes me think so I haven't really experienced with, like, goos or chews. Definitely
Yep.
not chews, so I won't be doing that. I
Yeah.
once had the Huma, like, mango chia gel with no caffeine in it, and I felt
Yep.
fine. So I'm
Okay.
thinking of doing that, but I haven't really experienced it with it, and so I mean, experimented with it. I have, like, 2 questions on this. One is just
Yeah.
in general, when would you recommend and how would you recommend people start testing that stuff out? Because that was something that really confused me. And then the
Yeah.
second question we can get into just, like, more personal to me is what do I do?
Yes, yes. We can definitely talk about that. So I'll backtrack with a little story because I used to not think that I needed to fuel during races, at least for half marathons. I was kind of like, I'll be
Right.
fine. I can run that distance. When I ran the Philly half, I had actually run another half marathon 6 days before. I got an opportunity to do it. So I took it, completely hit the wall during this half, and felt terrible. Like I had
Yeah.
trained for it, but I just was drained of all energy. And one of my coworkers was like, you should really fuel during your race. It's not a revolutionary concept. So during the Philly half, I took one Huma gel and it saved me. And I ended up
Wow.
PRing in that race.
This feels like a
So,
sign.
yes. So it really can make a difference. But again, it's a hard thing because ideally you practice it during your long run. So that's part of your training is practicing with fuel. So I will say in general, yes, fuel will make you feel better. But if you're going to be really nervous about something you haven't tried, it's kind of weighing like, do you want potentially to have a little less energy or do you want to be worried about stomach issues because of something you're not used to? So I would say for someone who's at the point who's like doing a half marathon, they haven't practiced with fuel, I would almost lean towards not taking some and know that that is something you can improve upon for next time and really focus on water and whatever electrolytes they have on course. Um, if you want to give it a go, you certainly can, but that's what I would say is maybe not if you haven't practiced it. But if you liked the Huma gel during the time you took it, I do think it'll make a difference. So for a half, I would say taking it anywhere between, if you're taking one, like mile 6 to 8. And
Okay.
basically, what those fuels are doing is replenishing your energy stores because if you're out there for long enough, you're going to deplete the energy that is available to you. You will be able to keep going, but you won't feel your best, is the way I would describe it. And then the other tip I would have with the fuel is time it with a hydration station because you want to be able to take water right afterwards or with it to help it get down okay. So for you, I know Philly half has stops around every 2 miles. So just kind of time it like, mile 7.5, if the water stops at mile 8 kind of thing, start getting it down. And then just take it really slowly. It doesn't have to be all one big slurp down, if that
Right.
makes sense. But again, with nutrition, like this is kind of general advice and advice based on what you've said. But I would say anyone who is thinking about doing themselves should talk to someone to figure out like what works best for them.
Yeah. I think because I'm intentionally not gonna test with anything that has caffeine in it because I feel
Yeah.
like that's aggressive on your stomach, or it could be fine, but because I haven't tested that out, I don't need to, like, poop my pants on the race, so I'm
Yep.
avoiding that. But I have already tested the just basic, like, mango and chia seed, whatever it
Yeah.
was. So I think I'll just do that because I already know it sits well with me. Now I'm realizing I don't even know if I have another one of that exact one, so we'll see. But I think that's really good advice, like, not testing with anything aggressive and new on race day, but
Yeah.
and that was a good explanation. I didn't really understand the purpose of a goose, so that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so you said 2 days out, hydration,
Yep.
I'm assuming, like, stretching.
Yeah, anything to kind of help keep you loose. I personally love a short shakeout run the day before. So that can be 10 to 30 minutes, really nice and easy. You just want to get your muscles loosened up. Any dynamic stretching is really great. And then, of course, foam rolling, or if you like to use a massage tool or something like that, all of that is good. And then the other thing with these big race weekends is, you'll go to the expo to pick up your packet and there's a lot of excitement and events, but do your best to stay off your feet beforehand as much as you can because you don't want to waste that energy going into race day or have your legs be tired from walking around. So definitely do what you got to do to get your stuff together and then try to rest. It's a good day to just sit in bed and watch TV.
Yeah. So you would say on actual race day, first of all, I'm curious your tips on people who aren't used to waking up at 4 AM and eating and having to run, like, the routine. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally, I guess you practice the routine, but the routine, I would assume, is not normal for most people.
Yeah.
So how do you what are your tips on kind of adjusting that morning and not feeling thrown off by it and not it's like, do you force the food down when you planned to eat the food, or do you wait till you're not that nauseous? Do you recommend doing the same thing in terms of, like, coffee and whatnot that you would on a normal run day? All of that kinda stuff. Like, how would you suggest someone adjust to that routine the morning of?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Race morning always feels a bit jarring, and I think that's very normal. Like you will wake up and it'll feel a little weird because you're waking up much earlier than you're used to. At the same time, you're also going to feel some adrenaline start to come in, excitement, nervousness. So there's a lot of different emotions at play, I would say. Um, I think it's helpful to either in your phone or write it down, kind of come up with a schedule for yourself because when you're waking up and you're tired, it's the fewer decisions you have to make, the better. So, have an ideal plan of when you ideally want to eat, when you ideally want to head to the start, all that kind of stuff. If you wake up and you're feeling nauseous and not very hungry, that is very normal as well. I would say start with hydrating, get some water in, give yourself a tiny bit of time. But ultimately, you do want to fuel enough to feel your best during this race. So I wouldn't force anything down if you're feeling really, really sick. But ideally, you do need to eat breakfast. So just take it slow, give yourself plenty of time to get through it. If you don't feel like you can eat a whole bagel right now, at least eat half. You can take the other half with you as you start going to the start. Maybe you'll start to feel a little hungrier as you go. But focus on getting what you can in you and just take your time if you can.
And then are you I mean, I know you specifically ran the Philly half, so are you, like, waiting around for hours before you even run? Because I know, like, for the New York City Marathon, people were waking up at 4 and not running till 11, like,
Yes.
is that typical of a half as well?
It'll really depend on the race. You'll have a much, much easier time at the Philly half than something like New York. I would say New York is pretty notorious for being
Right.
one of the longest wait times, so you won't have anything like that. But you should get there early enough to warm up, go to the bathroom, check your bag if you're doing that, which we can talk about too. And then you'll want to look up a lot of times races, depending on the size, they'll have different corrals they'll put you in, which is basically just your groupings, usually based on your anticipated finish time that you submit when you
Which
register.
when I registered, like, barely ran a mile in my life, so I made it so I think I made it, like, 2 to 3 minutes longer than my pace really is now.
And that's okay. That is
Okay.
totally fine. Like things will spread out. And Philly is a really good size race where there'll be a lot of people around, but it's not overwhelming. Like it's still easy to locate where you need to be. And I do think the race will spread out enough that you will be fine, even if you're passing people because of a difference in speed. But definitely look up what time. I was looking at the Philly website. I don't know if they had it listed, but what time you need to be in your corral because sometimes they'll close off that grouping. So maybe the race starts at 7 and your corral closes at 6:30.
Got it.
So then I would say like typically getting to the start area for your average race like an hour before your corral closes at a minimum. And again, just depending on the size of the race, that time might expand, but that's like a good starting point. So if your corral closes at 6:30, recommend getting there at 5:30. I know it's early, but you'll want to make sure you have time to do everything so you're not rushing around and wasting energy before you start.
Yeah, I think my plan is, like, okay, tonight, pack what I need to pack, get my stuff
Yep.
together, and then on the train tomorrow to Philly, I think I have hours on the train, so I think that's when I'm gonna, like, dissect the email I
Yeah.
got. Very confusing, like, I have no clue what time I have to be there or anything, it was really confusing. So I think that on the train ride is when I'm gonna kind of do what you said, which is, like, try to schedule out your morning, and
Yep.
I personally, even just in my regular morning routine, I need a lot of buffer time. Like,
Yep.
I wake up at 6 and I don't work out till 8, 8:30. Like, I need time to caffeinate, ease into the day, things like that, so God knows when I'm gonna be waking up at, like, 2 AM. Do you have any tips for a good sleep the night before. I'm sure it's like
Mm,
anxiety and I have to wake up soon and you're in a new place
yeah.
sometimes in a hotel.
Yes, I would say number one tip is don't panic, don't overthink it. The night before a race is really, really tough because you're worried about waking up, you're thinking about the race. So, my best tip is even if you can't fall asleep, just lie there with your eyes closed. You'll at least be resting your body. If you can get better sleep in the week and the weeks leading up to the race, that is great. I
I
know
tried. And then
doesn't always
and then
happen.
you proposed and I haven't slept once, which I fine. It was like I was like, "Really?"
Well, I think that in that case, it's also like reframe things to make yourself feel confident. So you have been enjoying your time with family and friends. You haven't had time to stress out about the race or hyper focus on it. So you're feeling good, you
Ride
know.
the high.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So reframe those things. And number one tip for the night before is don't panic if you don't get a lot of sleep because that's just going to make it worse at that point if you're really worried about it. So just do what you can. And I would say, if possible, try to wind down as early as you can, even if it's something like 8, 9 o'clock. So have an early dinner, start to wind down, and then the day before, definitely lay out everything you need. A lot of times I'll even put on my outfit for race day the day before just to make sure I have absolutely everything,
Yeah.
have it all out there and ready to go for the morning.
And do you like a running belt or like because I typically
Mm,
there's like so many little things like making sure headphones are charged and I'm like, I think I want to bring
yeah,
my AirPods case because if they die, I can like charge them in the case. Do you, I know it's a personal preference, but do you
yeah.
usually run with like a running belt or just like really deep pockets in your leggings or shorts?
So for my regular runs, I do use a running belt, but race day, I typically don't carry as much. I'll bring my gels, and that's kind of it. So I will just use the pockets in whenever I'm wearing. But again, whatever you've used, if you have a running belt you love, and I will say a tip with headphones that I would recommend is I personally like to wait till at least like halfway through the race to turn them on, and you can do something different, but that is a tip I give to everyone is even if it's like you start them 2 miles in or 3 miles in, because there is just so much great energy at the start of the race that it's really fun to be a part of that. You're going to have a lot of adrenaline at the start, so that's going to naturally carry you through. Then it's like a really nice thing when you're like, okay, now I'm in a spot where I'm not feeling as good, but amazing. I can turn on my
Right.
favorite playlist, and this is like a new thing I can do to help myself. So, again, everyone does not have to take my advice, do what works, but that would be my recommendation.
That is a good strategy. I personally, and I need to, I have a feeling the headphones are going to be an issue, but I maybe not because it'll be like 2 hours and I feel like they could last.
Yeah.
I have been running with the Nike Run Club and there's a half marathon run at the end of the plan where they
Oh,
actually like,
awesome.
so I really want to use it because I think it'll just be like exciting, inspiring, all the things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and I think I'm just going to bring my case with me because it's light
Yeah,
enough, and if I have to charge them
totally.
up for 20 minutes, then they'll be in the charging case, so that's kind of my plan, but I wanted to ask you also, well, I guess staying on this note, any other tips for I feel like you're just gonna say what you've been running with, but any little hacks or tips for what material or whatever you wanna be wearing for race day? It's gonna be in Philly, it'll probably be it's actually supposed to be rainy at this point, like rainy and cold. So, like,
Okay.
any tips you have in terms of it's a cold race day, but
Mhm.
by mile 13, you're probably sweating. So, any little hacks you have for, like, finding the right outfit?
Yes. So when I look at the weather, look at the time you'll actually be running, and then I would add 10 to 15 degrees to that to try to think about how you'll actually feel when you are running. So it is okay if before you start running, you feel a little chilly, because you will warm up and account for it feeling 10 to 15 degrees warmer than it is because you're running and moving. I would recommend if it's a cold day, have throwaway clothes, is what they're called.
Yeah.
So wearing something till the last second you can, an old pair of sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and then if you toss that to the side, it'll all be donated. So having something you're okay with giving away, that will help keep your muscles warm. And if you're shaking and shivering, again, that's energy that you're using. And then also using a gear check bag, and that'll be stuff you can access at the finish. So I would also put dry clothes in there and a dry pair of socks because your feet, you'll really want like something fresh on your feet. So if you can't bring a whole extra pair of shoes or recovery sandals, I would at least bring a dry pair of socks. That'll feel really good at the end.
Especially if it's gonna rain. I feel like that's a really
Yes.
good tip. Have a totally new pair of clothes. Okay, what if it's gonna it seems like it's gonna rain and I'm like, do I wear my little like rain jacket that I've been wearing on rainy runs, but what if I get hot? Like it's so hard to figure out what to do.
Yeah. I would say it depends on how much it's raining. And I know it's always frustrating when it's like, it depends on this, it's up to you
I
kind of
know it's
thing.
true though,
But
yeah.
so if it's just drizzling, I would say again, I personally would just run in not the
Yeah,
jacket. But if it's really raining, a jacket will most likely make you feel more comfortable. And I definitely recommend if you have a running hat you
yeah.
like, wear that because then you'll get the coverage from your face. And then usually those running jackets, a lot of times they're pretty packable. So I would just think in your head, like, okay, if I wanted to take it off, like, is there a way I could tie it around my waist or something, or like scrunch it up and put it in a pocket that I could then continue on easily.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do as we're thinking about it, I'm thinking like t-shirt, leggings, running hat in case it
Yeah.
rains. That's my plan because I don't think it's
Yep.
gonna pour, but I have to check again.
Yeah. And then if you have it, lots of like an anti chafe stick or body glide, something like that, especially if it's raining, like sports bra lines, shorts or legging lines, all of that. Just put that on beforehand too, because when it's raining, you're more likely to chafe. And same with your feet too. A lot of times that can just prevent blisters and chafing.
So I haven't had any issues with that except the one day I did 10 miles in the pouring rain and I had like scabs on my thighs because I was
Oh
in biker
gosh.
shorts.
Yeah.
So that was the only time I experienced that. I don't know if I probably haven't gone on a long enough run for it to get really bad, but it's true. And the rain was like the only time I was,
Yes.
holy shit, I've never
Yep.
experienced that before. So lastly, before we close out, I'm curious, just any like mindset, mental block
Yes.
tips for race day. Either you're hitting a wall or you're like, this isn't going as planned, or why aren't I feeling better? And you kind of get in your head and make it worse. Do you have any mental mindset tips for race day?
Yes. So I'll kind of take through, like, I would say split the race for your half marathon into three chunks. So, start of the race, focus on finding your rhythm, getting comfortable. So, that is one tip I have for the beginning of the race to set yourself up for success. Either have a goal pace or a goal kind of target feeling for the first 3 miles to make sure that you don't go out too fast. Because again, there's so much excitement and energy at the beginning of the race, which is fantastic. But a very common mistake is you'll end up going out too fast. And even if you don't have a time goal in mind, which is great, first half, like goal is to finish it feeling good, at least have a reminder to yourself, like, I want to feel comfortable at the start. I want to feel settled. I want this to feel like a regular long run. So then when you're starting out, you're not going too quickly, and then, mile 10, you're not feeling as good. So that's what I would say focus for, like, mile 0 through 5 through, that first kind of third of the race, if you will. Then, like, miles 5 or 6 through 10, that's usually where you want to find a rhythm, but things can get a little more difficult. And I know for Philly, there are more rolling hills in that second half of the race. So I do find having some sort of mantra can really help. Stay strong, power up this hill, consistent effort, those kind of things. And that middle chunk of the race is a lot about getting through little bumps in the road, whether that's an actual hill or a time where you're not feeling as good. So have an idea of your mind of what you're going to tell yourself when things get a little tough. So it could be a mantra. I also like to tell people to think of a really hard run you got through during your training. So, not the workout that went perfectly, but the workout that you didn't feel as good or something went wrong, but you still did it. That's a lot of what training is
I've
building that
that
confidence.
I've been calling that in my head, like, building evidence. So, anytime
Yeah.
I've gone for a run when I didn't want to or felt like shit or was hungover or in the beginning thought that it was gonna be a rough run and by the end of it was in a flow, like, I called all of those things. I'm just, like, garnering evidence to whip out on race day.
Yes, that's perfect. And again, that's so much of what training is. Like, yes, it's physically doing the miles, but it's prepping yourself for knowing that you can overcome things that might not go perfectly on race day because no race is perfect. There are going to be spots that feel tough. One other call out for that middle section, I actually really like something you said on, I think it was one of your podcasts or videos about even if something feels bad right now, it's not necessarily going to feel bad the whole rest of the time. So,
Totally.
like, doing what you can to get out of that little moment, walk for a little bit, throw in a little surge, like whatever you need to do. And
That was
then
a
that
good
last
reminder
section.
for me because because I forgot I said that, and that's so true. In the
Yeah.
moment, you're like, "Oh my god, it's only mile whatever," and I'm already having a hard time, but when I pushed through it, I would realize, like, a mile later, like, all of a sudden I'm cruising, a good song came on,
Yep.
like, all of a sudden it got better. So it's just
Yeah.
reminding yourself in those tough moments, like, it doesn't mean the rest of this race is gonna be tough. It's gonna ebb and flow. You might be going uphill and it's awful, but then the downhill comes and you're having the time of your life.
Yeah. Run the mile you're in. Like you said, don't get too ahead of yourself. Like, focus on what you need to do now. And my last two tips before I get to the end of the race, and sorry, I know I could just talk about this forever,
No,
but
please, 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 I need it.
middle of the race, two other things I would say beyond mental stuff is have a plan for the hydration stops. So, no, like I know for me, I typically take at least a little water and the Gatorade or electrolytes or whatever they have at every single stop. So, know in your head if you're going to do that. And even just taking some small sips can really help. So, have a plan for how you're going to navigate that.
What would a plan to navigate that look like? Like, I have a tiny bladder. Should I not be taking all the like, too much hydration? Like, what like, how do you come up with your personal plan for it?
Yes, so I think it's through experimentation and training too, but I will say if it helps people not feel as nervous that they're going to have to pee is when you're running, your body is focusing on sending all the blood to your legs and the muscles that are working, and it's not sending as much blood towards your other organs and digestive functions, which is why sometimes like you have to be careful with fuel that you can still digest it properly while the focus is on your other muscles. But for hydration, that is typically not as much of an issue. But of course, everyone's different. There's going to be porta pots along the way, like if something, if you do need to use the restroom. But I think even taking small sips. So, what I would recommend to everybody as a general tip is just when you see an aid station, try to go for one of the nearest water cups. Grab a cup in your hand, kind of pinch it, take some small sips. Some people like to stop and walk, or you can keep slowly running and then throw the cup to the side. And also try to, those are the places in the race where it's going to be really congested. So kind of go to the side, get your water, then go back to the middle so you're not amongst the chaos of people grabbing cups. And I would just take a little bit of water, throw it, then a little bit of the electrolytes and throw it. Don't feel like you need to finish the entire cup every single time. So just a little
Okay.
bit of hydration every stop.
Yeah, because I mean, in the future, I'm gonna have to start practicing this more. But like I said, my longest run's 10. So I haven't really had I'm like a little like one track minded when I'm running. And
Yeah.
I haven't done a long enough run where I need to really think about changing that yet. But I'm kind of just like one track mindset. I literally just go and I don't stop for water or anything. So I'm going to have to start adjusting that. But so it's like, I don't want to change anything on race day, but also I need to hydrate. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try to like, I think do what you said, which is like take a few sips each time and don't
Yeah.
feel like chug everything that's being handed to you.
Exactly. Just a little bit of water will go a long way. And at the beginning, you will probably feel like, oh, I don't need this. I'm totally fine. But it's about setting yourself up for
Right.
later in the race so your body doesn't feel dehydrated and like it doesn't have enough energy.
Okay, I have to remember
So,
that.
yes. And then my other tip for the middle of the race would be with hills. Focus on this is what I would say for someone again who your plan is like, I want to finish the race feeling good. Focus on consistent energy. So you're keeping consistent energy along the flats. Then when you go up a hill, keep that consistent energy. Your pace will probably be different, but keep that consistent effort up the hill and kind of carry that over the hill. So a lot of people, like when they get up to the hill, kind of be that pause. As hard as it is, like just think consistent effort over the hill. That'll help your body kind of keep moving and get through to the downhill instead of that kind of stop at the top that it's then hard to get back into it.
Okay, great tip. So
Yeah.
that's for the middle chunk, and then what would you
Yes.
say the last chunk is, like 9 to 13 or?
Yeah, like 10 to 13, 9 in that range. So once you get to 10 for you, I would say that's the moment where you can also just kind of celebrate that every single step you take is going to be farther than you have run. And I know that can be scary, but it's also like you are actively doing the thing. So be so proud of yourself for that portion. This is another section that can be really, really difficult. So I think this is the time, as cheesy as it is, to remember why you're doing it, to remember the people who are supporting you, remember all the training you did, why you worked so hard, and use that to really carry you through those last few miles and know that they are tough, they are hard, but that's why you're doing this because you're proving to yourself that you can do the hard thing and you're actively doing the hard thing. And then really, again, feel that race energy those last few miles. Typically, there'll be more spectators, so draw on that energy from the other runners and the spectators to carry you through the line and soak it in because you're finishing your half marathon.
Oh my, I can't wait for that. Can't wait for
Yes.
that. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think my main takeaway here is like, okay, I'm a few days out. I really need to start kicking up my hydration. So, would you
Yeah.
recommend like just up your water intake? I take Element a lot. Take an
Yep.
Element a day. Just it's
Yeah.
really all
Even two a day is great. And night before, I would take one the night before. And if you can get one down in the morning, if that's something you're used to,
I've been
I
doing
would do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Yep. But
Amazing.
really focus is like getting it in beforehand so you feel good during the race.
Okay, well, thank you so, so much. This was
Yes,
the most helpful
absolutely.
thing ever. I'm gonna skip the ending segment just because this is like a running spectacular episode, and this is
Yep.
what I wanted to spend the whole time talking about. So thank you so, so much. I'm so excited,
Absolutely.
and I know we're doing a giveaway that I'll put in the intro of what was it, 3 months?
3 months of free one-on-one coaching.
So we're gonna do a giveaway. You guys can enter to get 3 months of one-on-one coaching. I put it in the intro already, and we also have a link for if you mention the podcast, you'll receive 25% off your first 3 months on one-on-one virtual run training. So I'll put that all in the description below. And thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
I'm at Peppy Steps on Instagram and TikTok.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. You've got this. Good luck.